Decolonization needs to be understood, I think, in two key ways. One is the institutional decolonization and the relational decolonization. So we have colonial institutions that are thoroughly Western, and Indigenous peoples in Canada need to access these institutions. So decolonizing these institutions is about bringing in Indigenous perspectives and learning from them so that our institutions don't continue to marginalize and do damage to Indigenous communities. So there's kind of two aspects to it, I think. One is, well, how do we decolonize institutions? And there's been a lot of work lately on sort of bringing Indigenous knowledge to bear on things like health practices, education practices, legal practices. We've talked about integrating Indigenous knowledge into Canadian constitutions and those kinds of things. So there's a lot of that kind of work going on, which is the institutional aspect of decolonizing. In a way, it's kind of tearing down the destructive aspects of Western institutions and creating space, if you will, for Indigenous perspectives and practices. And on the other hand, there's, I think, a very personal and critical self-reflective part. For examples of existing decolonization practices in community engagement, there would be at an institutional level and at a relational level, kind of both of those working. Institutionally, we continue to work with like funding agencies and ethics agencies to facilitate methods of engagement that actually do prioritize Indigenous methodologies. And I think that's really key. Our institutions are not very good at relinquishing control of the process or relinquishing control of the money even. So this is sort of the dry policy bit where we actually are working on ways to transfer research money to communities where the leadership can actually sit with the community and the ability to decide how money is spent can sit with the community. And I think that's really important for community engagement. We need to take into account the rights-based aspect of community engagement. It's not just a humanitarian idea, it's not just charitable, it's not simply engaging so that we can kind of get more interesting data. I mean, the point is, if you look at the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, you look at the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, and even Aboriginal and treaty rights in Canada's Constitution. These are fundamental rights that Indigenous people have to control, to take charge of and control the way we do work with them. Decolonizing community engagement at a relational level, I think, is all about coming in with that perspective of humility and respect. Humility about our knowledge base, where we're coming at the problem from, recognizing that Charles Taylor is a fantastic political philosopher out of McGill, and he has a great quote. This was more about Indigenous rights in the 90s, but it's the height of arrogance to assume that a worldview that has sustained people for millennia has nothing to teach us.